Are you indecisive like I am? We're gonna show you 4 ways to finish our basic cider. If you haven't seen our video, I'm gonna put a link in the description below.
So we made this basic cider, which is just apple juice, okay? And it tastes pretty good. Went dry, and it's like, let's see here, 7.3%. Got to thinking, there's a lot of ways to do things with this. So we're gonna do this 4 different ways. Let me go through the 4 and then we'll go through what we're gonna do to each one. Number 1, see it's clearly marked with a number 1. We're not actually doing anything to that one. It's gonna be still, which means not sparkling, and it's going to be dry, which means not sweet, okay? A lot of people get those terms confused as well. So what do we have to do with this? Nothing, not a thing. That's kind of our control, okay? Then number 2, by the way, I have notes over here because there's a lot of numbers. There was some math. Number 2 is actually going to be sweet, but not carbonated. And I'm aiming for about a 1.015 for the final gravity for sweetening. Math to come, showing you how to achieve that. Don't you worry, we got you covered. Number 3, right here, will be carbonated and dry. So it's number 1, plus carbonation, right? So this one, we're going to be adding some sugar to it to get it to recarbonate, and that's it. We don't have to do anything else to that one. Number 4 is carbonated and sweet. So it's kind of the combination of number 2 and number 3 together. We're also aiming for a 1.015 final gravity, which will be very difficult to determine because it'll be carbonated and I won't be able to actually check that. On to what we're going to do to each one. So, as I said, number 1, we do nothing. Number 2 is going to get 29 grams of sugar added to it. Since there's no carbonation, we're just sweetening it. Now, this is where the math starts to happen. I arrived at 29 grams using this formula. I happen to know that for each gravity point in 1 ounce of fluid, it is 0.077 grams of sugar, or whatever is making the density. In this case, we're using sugar, so it's 0.077 grams of sugar per gravity point per ounce. You're still with me. So 0.077 times 15, because I want 1.015, equals 1.155. That's part 1. Now, each of these bottles is 25.3 ounces or 750 milliliters, so I have to multiply that 1.155 by 25.3, and that brings me to 29 point something something something, so 29. Close enough. It's good for what we're doing, so it'll be very close to a 1.015. Now, this one, we're not actually going to add the sugar today. I'm just explaining what we're going to do. And the reason why we're not is because this will need to be pasteurized. There is a very strong chance that this will restart fermentation, and we don't want that to happen. And I don't want to pasteurize just 1 bottle, so we're going to wait and pasteurize all the bottles that need to be pasteurized at the same time. On to number 3. Now, number 3 is going to be carbonated but dry. So for this one, we're going to be adding some sugar, and let me explain how I arrive at the number I'm using. I like to use 1 ounce of sugar in a gallon for carbonation. There's calculators online and all kinds of different ways to calculate it. I found that to be a nice general approach to carbonation. A little bit more, a little bit less isn't a problem, but a lot more is a problem, and a lot less, probably not going to get any carbonation. So we go kind of that happy middle. It's a good number to start with, okay? So because there are numbers again here, let me go through this. 1 ounce is 28 grams. So if I divide that into 750 ml bottles, it gives me roughly 5.5 grams of sugar per 750 ml bottle. So number 3 will get, let me just do it as we're talking, 5.5 grams of sugar added to it. And, oh, let me just do this. There we go.
He's sad because he can't thwack his packet.
Okay, so we went there. Now, somebody's gonna ask, aren't you gonna oxygenate this when you try shaking it up and mixing? A very, very minute amount, probably, but I do wanna mix that in. You don't wanna just leave it sitting there because it won't do anything. You definitely wanna get it mixed through.
Now, he's not full on shaky, 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 shaking it.
And
it's more of an inversion.
Yeah.
Like that.
And there's a little bit of gas buildup in here still. You can hear it, see? So I can do that and yeah, it spits at you and release that CO2. So we're really not oxygenating it at all. It does cloud it up a bit. Easy way to know if it's totally mixed in is let it sit for a minute, and anything that settles to the bottom hasn't been mixed through. I see a little bit. Now, like I said, this one does not need to be pasteurized. Why? It's a controlled amount of sugar that was placed in there. Once that sugar's gone, fermentation is going to stop. And there's only so much. We know how much pressure these bottles can hold. Therefore, all good. It's controlled. That's why we measure. Yeah, I'll just let some of the pressure out now. That's why we measure how much we put in. If I just dumped a bunch of sugar in there, there's no way to know if it's enough, too much. Is it going to make a bomb? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? We don't know.
That's why in this particular example of natural carbonation, math is your friend.
Absolutely. So number 4, because it's a combination of these two, it's carbonated and sweet, is actually going to get the same 5.5 grams from number 3 and 29 grams from number 2, so it's going to get 34.5 grams, and I happen to have that already pre-measured here. I'll just dump it right in. It's a little bit more to mix up this time, so it'll take a little bit more, getting the bejesus out.
Now, when we're dealing with these small measurements, we have to switch scales from our big scale to our little tiny scale. And we got that off of Amazon, so I'm going to put a link to that in the description below.
Yeah, this little scale can go to 1/100th of a gram, and it's very accurate. It's a jeweler scale. It's really, really great, and we love it. If you try using the regular scale, very inaccurate for down to the gram. You'll never get it right. You want to be very close to accurate with these, as close to perfect as you can be. Close to accurate, that's funny. Okay, this one I know is going to take a little bit of shaking. And it's going to spit at me because I got to open it up. So had I degassed the original more, there is a chance of oxidation. However, these are going to be building up CO2 anyway. So the chances are so slim that anything's really going to come of it. I'm not worried. There's very little oxygen in there to begin with. Now, one thing very important to know about this particular one and number 2 is they are meant to stay sweet. However, these are not filtered. There's still yeast in here. Even though it's been racked, their yeast are still there. They're not dead. They're just dormant. And this is only 7%. The yeast can go higher than that. Therefore, we have to pasteurize. That is crucial. The difference is, number 2, we want to pasteurize immediately so it doesn't ferment at all. Number 4, it's a little bit of a crapshoot because we want this to carbonate, so use some of the sugars, but not all the sugars. So we want to pasteurize that once it's reached the right amount of carbonation. What's the right amount of carbonation? That takes a little bit of experimentation. In our particular environment, it's anywhere from 5 to 8 days. So what I may do is do a little like that. If I hear a pop, I'm going to seal it right back up, and then we'll pasteurize that bottle along with number 2. Let me do a little bit more mixing though, and bang it off the table more. As far as pasteurization goes, we actually have a few videos on pasteurization. There's a couple ways to do it. I can leave the cap off on number 2 when we pasteurize it because it doesn't really matter, and I will do that so that one is my check for temperature. 140 degrees Fahrenheit, please. Don't go any higher than that. You don't want to start altering the flavors, but 140 degrees for about 10 minutes and you're good. We've done it with a sous vide. You can do it with just hot water. There's a lot of ways to do it. We'll have videos linked below on how to do that aspect of it. This one, you want to keep the top on because the idea is to keep the carbonation and all that. So if you pop the top, it's gone. So at this point, we're just going to wait like 5 or 6 days and then we'll be back to show you the finished result. All right, it's been a week and number 2 has had nothing done to it. So it's time.
So to refresh your course, number 2 is the still but sweet.
Yes, no carbonation. That's why we waited, because we're going to pasteurize this along with number 4. But if I had put all the sugar in earlier, it would have been more like a number 4, only less sweet.
Sure.
And again, just mixing this up real good. We are not going to wait long on this because there's still live yeast in here. Yeast don't die when they're not doing anything. They go dormant, which means they can be woken up anytime more food or availability of food is there for them. We're not going to be going over the entire pasteurization process in this video. We actually have a video on the sous vide pasteurization process, so I suggest watching that if you haven't seen it. It goes over everything you need to know. Suffice to say, we're going to heat to 140 degrees internal temperature for 10 to 15 minutes in the bottles. And done. Lids on, lids off, doesn't matter unless you're trying to keep carbonation in. Then it does matter. So this one, there's no carbonation. I am going to actually pasteurize this open so I can stick my thermometer in to see its temperature. All right, as promised, we have number 4 and number 2 getting ready to be pasteurized. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so here's the sous vide with our number 2 bottle right here and number 4 bottle over there. It's not up to temperature yet. It's only at 126.9. As you can see, it'll take a little bit. Once it gets there, I'm gonna hold that for 15 minutes and then we shut it off, let them cool, and that's what it'll look like. So the ones that need to be pasteurized got pasteurized, and then we put them all in some cold water because our fridge would take far too long to chill, and most of them are chilled pretty good. The ones that were pasteurized are still a little on the warm side, sort of, so, you know, we're just gonna have to do the best we can. But let's just start. You know, they're all my way. So we have 4 glasses here, and we're gonna do a very scientific test of this tasting. I'm just gonna pour it in a glass, we're gonna taste them. The first one is stilled and dry. I'm just gonna pour some in the glass. That's a hefty pour. We got 4 of these to do. But it's cider. 7.3%. I mean, come on. So number one. I'm just gonna pour these all out. Wait a minute. Number 2, this is still in sweet. Shouldn't have any pop. It's number 2. Number 3, this one was carbed and dry. Let's find out, did it carb? Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it did.
That's carbed.
Whoa, whoa.
Wrong glass.
Wrong glass.
Let's put it into a fresh glass. Oh yeah, that's got some carbonation. Beautiful. So that's number 3. And then we have number 4, which is the carbed and sweet. That also carved up. Fantastic. And if I sound surprised, it's because there's always a little bit of concern when you do natural carbonation in the bottle that it just isn't gonna work, you know.
We didn't have a tester bottle. Normally when we do natural carbonation, we'll have a plastic bottle that we use as our tester bottle because you can squeeze the plastic, don't squeeze the Sherman, and you will have a better idea of whether it's actually carbonated or not.
All right, pick up number 1.
Number 1.
Now this is the most boring of the 4. Well, it has nothing done to it. This is like the control, okay? This is stilled and dry, so it's just a basic cider as is.
Apple cider.
And nothing wrong with it. It's actually quite nice. Number 2. This one's sweet, but not carbed.
I like the sweet better.
Oh, that's really good. Remember, we only went to about 1.015 on these, so it's not like an overly sweet. It's about right for what most ciders from the store might be. All right, the next one is carbed and dry, so it is bubbly but dry. So it's kind of like the champagne of cider.
Now, we have noticed a thing about carbonation, and that carbonation sometimes fools the mind into thinking there's more sweetness in there than actually is.
Which is weird, because carbon dioxide's actually bitter.
Right, so how does it work? I don't know.
But it does. I don't question it. I just go with it. Does it fool you into thinking it's sweet?
Well, not after having the sweet one. If I had it after the dry one,
oh,
the
that's
still
still
one.
good, though.
Oh, yeah.
That's nice. Very crisp, very refreshing.
Yep. It's definitely pushing it more towards a beer profile.
Oh yeah, that tastes like a beer. And then we have the last one, which is carbonated and sweet. I have high hopes for this one.
I actually paused a moment before releasing my grasp on the glass to
There's more.
hand it over to Ryan because that is really nice. Now,
Yeah, that's
the
really
carbonation in that one
good. Doesn't feel as strong.
doesn't feel as strong, but it also makes it not as sweet as the sweet still.
Okay,
And
yeah, I agree.
I know we used math to
Yeah,
do the things.
the fact that
here.
it doesn't have as much carbonation makes me think that not as much sugar is carbonated as that one, which would make it
should
be sweeter than that one,
this,
but it's actually not.
But the carbonation
So-
is kind of like,
Did we just dispel a myth that carbonation makes
Smoothing it
things
out.
taste sweeter?
I don't know.
We may have. There's no definitive answer there. Now, the interesting part about these is cider is usually best aged, okay? This stuff is literally 5 weeks old at this point.
Yeah, and for that, and knowing that,
It's
and
excellent.
taking this tasting, even this one is still a very drinkable beverage. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have any complaints with that. And all our previous experience with ciders is that let those bad boys sit because it's going to take a while to get that rough edge off. I'm getting a hint of the rough edge, but it's not so abrasive that I don't want to drink it. I like it.
I'm gonna have to say, I actually really like the non-carb sweet one best. It definitely has the best flavor overall. It's sweeter.
And the interesting thing for me when tasting this one with the sweetness without the carbonation is that rather than getting the sensation of this is sweet, I was getting more of the sensation of this is ripe fruit.
This is juicy apples.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
That's the thing about the right amount of sweetness is with fruit. Fruit is sweet. It has sugar. It should taste sweet. So when you want something to taste that juicy, fruity thing, you need a little bit of sweetness in there. But if you go too much, now it just tastes like cloying sugar. Blah,
and this does not taste like that at all. It's just juicy fruit.
It's like somebody squeezed a bunch of apples into a little bit of Everclear. That's pretty much what it tastes like. No, it doesn't taste like that at all. It tastes far better than that, but you get the idea. It literally, it's so good. I'm gonna pour a little bit more of this one. It just came out really nice.
That's really nice. But I like all of them.
Yeah,
honestly.
they're all good in their own way. I don't really have an issue with
If
any.
I were handed any of these to drink, I would drink it happily without any complaint.
Unless you knew that someone else had this one, then you might. Want this one.
Then we'd have to arm wrestle.
So good. And I think over time these would age really nicely. However, now that we've opened them all and they're all a little bit low, they're probably gonna have to get drank sooner rather than later. So they'll get refrigerated and kept and we will finish them off. But
We don't feel bad about that, so neither should you.
No, don't feel bad about that. Don't feel bad for us. But as I like to do whenever we do a tasting like this,
we have to have...
we gotta put them all in together. It's not bad. I still think number 2 is better. But you get a little fizz, and it's not as sweet. You know, kind of what you'd expect. It's half carbonated and half sweet. It's not bad. It's pretty decent. So there is 4 different ways to prepare your apple cider. We are thinking about doing another series like this where we take an apple cider and maybe flavor it a couple different ways, treat it a couple different ways. So this is just like a preparation, a finishing, and then there's flavoring, which is a whole other aspect.
If you're interested in that idea and you have some particular profiles that you would like to see us explore, please leave that in the comments below.
And we will definitely take note of that, and I'll add them all up, and whoever gets the most votes, maybe that's the one that we work on first. Who knows? But in the meantime, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.